Welcome! Welcome to the US export control series for non-US companies and their US partners and subsidiaries. So I've moved to the top right of the screen so you can see my slides. So I want to tell you what this series is all about. But before I do, if you don't know who I am, well, take a look. My name is Arnie Mielken, and I've been in customs and global trade for 15 years and more. It's absolutely fascinating, especially export controls, and especially what the US has created as a system for export control. So I'm so excited to share this series on US export controls with you. So you want to know about US export control regulations, huh? So chances are you are receiving US origin items. You are incorporating US origin items in your production process. Are you exporting items of US origin or items that contain some US origin? Are you exporting that out of the US, out of the EU, out of the UK, or out of really anywhere in the world to really anywhere in the world except the US? Well, if that is so, then chances are that you are responsible, at least for some part, for the compliance with US regulations associated with these items. So export controls, what actually is export controls? What are these? Well, in the broadest sense, and this is just a high-level presentation, so we got to look into the details a little bit later. But export control at its very highest level are restrictions imposed by governments on the tangible and intangible movements of certain goods, items, software, and technology, and the provision of technical assistance related to controlled items, and also there are other restrictions on trade. So that, to unpack all of what I've just said, is already quite a lot. But many people ask me to tell them a little bit about why export controls actually matters. And for what are we doing this? Are we controlling the export of certain items, software, and technology? Well, the reasons are on this slide. It's about protecting national security. It's about implementing and supporting foreign policy objectives, peace, preventing the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. We know them as a WMD. Also, more and more protecting human rights, addressing economic and short supply concerns, and of course, a big one, combating terrorism. The reasons for export controls can be summarized in this slide and on these pictures. We don't want any of this, so let's do something about it. And of course, it is about preventing this from happening. I would not like to see your company on a Justice Department news item or on the front cover of a magazine or a newspaper. And as you read this slide, you see that here we're talking about serious stuff. Here we're talking about penalties that go in the millions, let alone the reputational damage. So the three questions businesses need answers to, really, regardless if you're in the UK, the EU, or anywhere in the world. Does your product, the product you're producing, the product manufactured outside the US, that does contain some US origin, does that require a US export approval prior to exporting it out of your country? That's not even in the US. And could you or your non-US based company, could they still be classified, considered as a US person as per the US export control law? So to whom and to where can and can't you send your products as per the US law? To answer these important questions, we need to first of all answer two other questions. They are essential. The first question we need to answer is, am I subject to the EAR? The EAR is the Export Administration Regulations, one of the key export control regulations in the US, administered by the Bureau of Industry and Security. So wanting to know, am I subject to the EAR, is however not as straightforward as one may think. Assessing whether you or your products are subject to the EAR can be complex, and this is because the EAR can control quite a lot. Here are 4 things the EAR can control. So there would be the obvious actual shipment from the US to a non-US location of items, so hardware, software, technology, including technical data. But there is also the export of a non-US location, UK, EU, China, Japan, Australia, anywhere. So a non-US location to another non-US location of items, hardware, software, and technology and technical data. There's also just the pure, simple release of technology and technical data to non-US persons in the US, or third country nationals, persons outside the US. And there is non-US made products with US origin content, or produced using US technological data from one non-US location to another. So that could be very much the case of delivery or sending items from one space in the EU to another, or from the UK to Ireland, the works. So all of that can be controlled by the EAR. So that's a big problem. So what's crucial here is a provision called de minimis. That can really come to our rescue, because if you're making this product that incorporates US origin controlled content, you need really to understand these de minimis rules provided for in the EAR. They determine how much US content you are committed to incorporate before triggering the need for an export control authorization in the US. And we need to really understand how this is applicable and how these de minimis percentages work and how they're calculated. And yeah, we really need to go through some examples to make this really understandable. There are also product direct rules. There are product de minimis and product direct rules decision trees to help us just determine that. And there's also a kind of secret get out of jail principles called the second incorporation principle. We got to understand what that is, because that can really make sure that we're not subject to the EAR in the first place. So I talked about the first big question, am I subject to the EAR? The second big question we then need to answer is, do I need a license? So if I've determined, unfortunately, yes, I am subject to the EAR, well then I need a license. Or not, right? So here are 10 top tips that I can give you to see if you need a license or not. First, don't forget that US export controls do not only concern the item. Please consider destination, end user, and end use. Second top tip, there are numerous license exceptions with the EAR that you can explore. Third tip, please watch out. Many products that are controlled under the EAR are classed as dual use, but they also control some military. The EAR also controls some military items, and then there are also some that are just purely commercial. So you've got to look into the EAR closer. 4, you need to get to grips and good at reading the Commerce Control List, the logic of the classification, the constituent parts of the Commerce Control List, and the relationship with other lists. The 5th tip I can give you is to use the 10 general prohibition as your checklist. We'll be able to go through that in our training. And then also, please learn to read the Commerce Country Chart. 7, understand the reasons for control as provided for by the EAR. Then 8, get a clear understanding on the country groups, how they work and what they mean. 9, understand the meaning of the EAR 99 listed goods. And then 10, finally, zoom in on the most relevant license exceptions. Please don't forget about technology transfer. This can really trick you up, and it is a controlled activity, or it can be at least a controlled activity. Sharing intangible technology and software related to US items that are controlled requires an authorization as well, just as if it were a physical item that you're sending. And this is known as ITT, or intangible technology transfer. So it's one of the most difficult areas of compliance to implement right now, and also to monitor. So we'll be looking at that. So we need to know what is controlled and how. We need to understand what are the best practices that businesses can employ to ensure that your technology transfer, which happens every day really, or can happen every day, in all its forms, are protected and controlled. We need to look at things like intra-company transfers, business trip, deemed exports, and of course, the cloud for storing potentially controlled data. And if you pull all of this together, you will see that what we really ought to do is to think about an ICP. We need to design an internal compliance program to US standards. The question is, should you get one or should you not get one? And you know, if you do, what are the benefits and what are the disadvantages of getting one? Of course, from a US perspective, it's pretty clear. If you're dealing a lot with the US companies feel most comfortable when trading with non-US companies where you have established this internal compliance program. And if this ICP then meets US standards, then non-US companies can showcase their understanding and compliance with US export controls regulations that providing valuable reassurances to the US partners. So we got to think about how we can make it much easier to trade with the US, and the ICP is certainly a way to go. So if we pull everything we've discussed together, where do we get to? Well, look, to understand US export controls, we need to first of all start at the beginning, right? The what, the who, the why, the where, the when, and the how. All of these questions we need to address. Only then, when we have this fundamental grounding, can we answer the 2 fundamental questions that we've been talking about here today. And that will then lead us to answering the question whether me in the UK or in the EU, I do actually need a license when I want to send a product from, say, Germany to Greece, right? That wouldn't need a license, would it? Well, to understand that, we need to understand if I'm subject to the EAR. So we got to look at that. Then we got to understand if I could be excluded from being subject to the EAR by looking at the US content in my exports. And then that is the Minimus Rule and the various bits that go with it. If I am subject to the EAR, then I need to understand the commerce control list. So we're going to sort that out once and for all. And then, of course, thinking about ITT, so thinking about the technology transfers and how that works in the 21st century. And then finally, of course, a very crucial element is the ICP, the internal compliance program. We've got to get that. Well, I think we've got to get that. And if we are thinking about it, what does it need to entail? What are the best practices? How can I set it up? All of that we need to talk about. So with that said, I would love to invite you to join us for our essential US export control training. It starts from the 27th of May. It's a series of 6 weekly educational webinars focused exclusively on US export controls from a non-US company perspective. It's a step-by-step approach. We're going to explain the impact of US extraterritorial export controls on the activities on you, on the non-US companies, whether you're based in the UK, the EU, or elsewhere. We will describe best practices in keeping risks in check and ensure compliance with these stringent rules. We have insisted on an extended length, no 60 minutes. We're going to go all out. We're going to go 90 minutes because this allows me to get this complicated stuff to you in a tangible way, in a well understood way. and leave us time to discuss, to debate, to share experiences, to ask questions, right? So it becomes more of a workshop than, you know, just this normal webinar that you are now so used to. So all in all, we'll have 6 sessions. We'll cover all of the subjects we discussed here today. It's every Thursday. It starts on the 27th of May and it finishes on the 1st of July 2021. So it's your perfect pre-summer learning. The time is always fixed. It's always 3 to 4:30 if you're in the UK, Ireland, or Portugal. And if you're in mainland EU, it's from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. So 1600 to 1730. And if you're in the US, hello. If you're in the East Coast, it's 10 to 11:30. And I'm so sorry for those guys in the on the West Coast. It's an early rise, but it's worth it because you get to be with us, right? Hey, and if you are getting all of the 6 sessions, I have a treat for you, right? So because of your commitment to the 6 sessions, to really learning about export controls, you are going to get an exam in the end. Well, if you don't like the word exam, let's call it a quiz, right? We're not going overboard here, but we do want to know what you've learned across the last 6 sessions. So you will get the option, it's all optional, to complete that and consolidate your learning. It'll allow you to go back through the materials, which are going to be made available, of course, learn it, and then prepare for the quiz. You get to pass it, and if you pass it, you'll get a certificate of completion, and that will document and showcase your progress and achievements, something I'm sure your boss wants to know about. Every participant, though, if regardless of whether you are doing the exam or not, will get a certificate of participation. So don't you worry, right? You are going to get something that says, I've done this course. And of course, there's more. If you sign up to all 6, you're also going to get a free subscription to the premium ongoing support service courtesy of my company, Customs Manager, for the entire duration of the training. And that includes an email, phone, message helpline for all your customs, yes, customs too, and export control questions, whether that is in the UK, the EU, or the US, or really around the world. You get access to Customs Manager's expert block and export control content that is refreshed every week. It's a library that already is growing and growing with lots of great content on customs, global trade, and export controls. And of course, there's also the opportunity to meet me face-to-face to discuss your issues, your questions specific to your business. It's a free, friendly, and informal consultancy and advice session that you can book easily on the website. There are discounts to other events, webinars, and services, and of course, exclusive meetups, which currently happen virtually. The link to sign up is already below, so you can click that, check it out, and I'll see you then once you've signed up. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your attention, and I hope you had a bit of an intro session. You had a bit of an eye-opener as to what is this thing, US export controls, and why does it matter to my company. I'd love to see you. I'd love to discuss with you, and I hope you take up the opportunity to meet with me and discuss US export controls from a non-US companies and perspective. And of course, we welcome US partners and their subsidiaries for these sessions as well. I'll see you on the 27th. I can't wait. Bye.